Hello and welcome to In the Light, Growing Your Soul with me, Anna Isabel. And it is with great pleasure that I introduce today my guest, who is Gopal. And now I'm going to have to do some verbal gymnastics. Chandrasekaran. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah, thank you for giving me this chance to talk to you.
Well, your book is so beautiful. It is called The Journey into Oneself.
Yeah.
And there's so much about it. And I've actually written some quotes here that
Mm,
we can discuss. So, right at the start, in the acknowledgements,
mm,
you've written cosmic energy and intelligence are behind all actions in the universe. Our level of awareness decides to what extent we are open to them. So we acknowledge they're working through us and cooperate with them. The divine flow helps us keep matters in order. I thought that was so beautiful and so profound. And
mm.
I thought, in the same way that it kind of opens your book, it might be nice to talk about that as an opening to
Well,
our conversation today.
okay. Yeah, that's right. As you said, this thing is taking us to a region which is different from the conventional mindsets, vibrations, which is usually self centered and ego supporting. But when we step out of that, we understand that there are vaster fields and with wonderful energies to be understood. So then we begin to release ourselves from the pressure of the habitual neurology, which may be called, of the conventional mind's neurosis. So, our idea would be to tune in with the vaster energies and intelligence. And that becomes a natural consequence to releasing ourselves from the pressure of this conventional neurosis.
Yes, because although obviously we all need to have a strong sense of self and a strong sense of identity,
Yes,
we can get lost in the detail of day to day living.
yes,
And that is incredibly pressuring. So it's good to kind of step back and
mm,
have a bigger picture
yes,
of of life and put things into context. So
yes.
I like that very, very much.
Thank you.
How did you tell us about your journey to where you are now?
Okay. Now, it started when I was in high school, and we had to do two languages, the local language plus English. And in the local language, they had a textbook and a subsidiary story like or some other things other than serious textbook. So the second one for us was called Ramakrishna Upanishadam, and that was a book written by a Bengali in India, and there are many anecdotes and parables in the book, and as part of our education, we had to answer some questions from it in the exam. But it really attracted me. Say that there is this much better side to life than getting lost in the personal desire, fulfillment, and the life. So that was the starting point. And then in 1965, when I was 24, J. Krishnamurti came to our town, Chennai, in India. And he used to come in December for a month and give evening talks, Sunday evening, 6 to 7, in a huge garden. People sat on carpets and a few on chairs. And his talk was very impactful. And especially the phrase that caught me much was when he often mentioned the silent mind. So I thought there must be something tremendous behind this phrase, and that's usually not the case. Our minds are very noisy. So this phrase really hit me hard. That is when I started listening to the enlightened masters like Ramana Maharishi and some others like Adi Shankara, Meister Eckhart from Europe. And in modern days, we have people like Eckhart Tolle and others who talk to us about the other side. And unfortunately, not many people are drawn to it now. And there's a lot of unrest in the world because they're getting lost in the noisy mind and do not talk about stepping out of it. So that's how I came into this matter of journey into oneself, based on a few incidents that took place in my young days, and then I was drawn to the masters.
Beautiful. And we are all benefiting from that as you've written this beautiful book. Another quote, and I think this is possibly not, maybe it's the introduction, which I really love. We are all co-passengers on this venerable journey of life. When we recognize this, there is a sense of togetherness and associated camaraderie. If we add a note of empathy and celebration to this togetherness, the journey becomes vibrant and lovable. There's not a lot I can say apart from there is something, the energy of that paragraph really touched me very, very much because it resonates with what I feel is important in life. So can you elaborate on that and on the role of empathy that we need to have?
Yes. Okay. This is the main issue because it is not looked into by many people because they're getting lost in the usual vibrations, concerns, worries, and imagine the future and things like that. So empathy is there the moment we are freed from this unnecessary noise, which is making us like a robot. So a robot cannot be compassionate. So the noisy mind is responsible for moving us into the region of being a robot. And the moment we realize this, we sort of feel shocked that we have been wasting our life by not being empathic people, not being compassionate, merely because the conventional mind drowns us in its noise. As a result, we find that our feeling for others get dried up. So the moment we feel this, immediately we feel that we need to be a lot more compassionate than what we usually are. We have been on some occasions very compassionate and made some people feel good, but that's more an exception than the general rule. So when we come into this journey into oneself, immediately the fountain from us starts flowing out, unconditional love, and that is empathy is part of it. So we don't look at people anymore with the image we have about them, but we first see them as throbbing human beings full of life and going through many problems like oneself. So we feel sympathetic about. And then our general disposition towards people changes because we see them first as human beings and then as some Egyptian, Pakistani, and so on. But the image we have about them based on nationality, religion, language, all those barriers unnecessarily dry up our compassion and empathy is not there. So the moment we realize that we must step out of this image-oriented relationship, then we find immediately the compassion flows from us towards the other, and the other will feel. And then the empathic approach to things become a natural concomitant factor to that.
It is true that fear stands in the way of connection. And, it's when we're afraid, our instinct is to protect ourselves. And sometimes that is really important because, yes, sometimes that really is very important. And so to have, strong personal boundaries and to recognize and respect the boundaries of others is very important. But beyond that, when we're feeling secure in our personal boundaries, we are also able to reflect and connect with others. And when we connect, we are able to empathize and see beyond appearances and beyond the stereotypes that we are given about other people, so that we're able to see the common denominator, which is their humanity. And I think that is very important, and we need to strive to have that ability to be objective but compassionate with that objectivity. So I think that that really spoke to me. So something else you said that I thought was very good. While religions do offer some solace and throw some light on the journey, they are limited because their zone soon becomes the playground of the ego. Such an approach is too narrow to appreciate the vastness of the journey of life. Tell us more about that.
Okay. The moment we begin to be alive to the person, and we find that there is a joy in it, joy of meeting, because the prejudices and other things don't interfere in that connection. So we find that we are able to relate ourselves to others, even not only human beings, the other beings as well, living beings, and then even to inanimate things, we find that there is a feeling that they can respond to. And in fact, in that case, we find that our self-importance begins to water down in the power on us. So we find that we are more other-oriented than self-oriented. So in that sense, our life, everyday life becomes an experiment in that kind of relationship with people, with other living beings, and even the inanimate things. The relationship changes to the point of being a matter of joy, irrespective of whether one gets something from them or not. So that way, the self-importance begins to go down. And then immediately, compassion flows towards others, because they are basically very compassionate human beings. But unfortunately, this noisy mind produces this kind of self-importance, and compassion from inside is unable to flow out. So all we have to do is not exert effort to be compassionate. It doesn't work like that. Just stop this noise and see what happens. In that awareness, we find that we are really compassionate human beings, and we enjoy every relationship. Sometimes we'll have to face people who are very rough and unreasonable, unfair, and so on. But our response will not be very reactive. There'll be more response rather than reaction, in that sense that the other person also notices and will become less hard in dealing with us. So on the whole, when we take the journey into ourselves and see how the noisy mind is piling everything, then naturally we move away from it effortlessly. The self-awareness brings about the release from the tyranny of the noisy mind, and then immediately our compassion flows out. And there is joy in it, because we find that every day is a new day and fresh and beautiful. And you have been in the field of hypnosis, so you would be able to tell us more about it.
Yes, indeed. I think this is at the heart of everything. When you talk about, the increase in self-awareness, and so enabling us to do this, and this is absolutely the case, because the more we know ourselves, the less we have to prove. The more self-accepting we are, the less we have to prove. And the less we have to prove, the less self-protective we become. So, as you say, we don't overreact in the same way. We act in measure to what is being presented to us. So if we need to be assertive, we can be assertive without being aggressive. If we need to correct something, we can correct it without being aggressive, because that fear just isn't there. And the thing is, we do have an amygdala. We do have a fight flight response, and I would add another one, hide. So we have those responses that are hardwired into us for survival. But the difficulty is that we lose perspective, and we apply those principles out of context. We're not necessarily being threatened. Sometimes we genuinely are under threat, and it is appropriate to take measures. However, what we're talking about is the overreaction that we can be prone to, and also the hypersensitivity that leads us to interpret things that are not a threat as a threat. And that's what we're really talking about. And if we can come back into knowing who we are, and you talk about compassion for everything. I would include compassion for ourselves in that. So if we can come back to ourselves with compassion and be accepting of ourselves, it means then that, as we've said before, there is less to prove or nothing to prove. So we can afford to provide others with the compassion that you're talking about, which is why it's so important to bring that stillness. So you keep talking about this busy mind of ours. What do you recommend to help us begin to still the mind?
Okay, the main thing is to be interested in what may be called Atma Vichara in Sanskrit, meaning that being interested in our inner being rather than be carried away by the ego-based general psychology. So when we are on Atma Vichara, we become very interested in understanding what lies beyond the apparent. And most people are not interested in it because that doesn't give them an extra dollar. So most of the things are very commercial in approach. So as a result, what we can do is to encourage people to move into understanding what lies beyond the apparent, because then we find that, as you said, we are becoming overreacting to things and so on, is because of the energy stored in the ego, because thought process does the thing. And if we are caught up in the conventional mind's approach, it keeps energizing the ego, and then our reactions become hard. So as a result, when we become interested in what lies beyond the apparent, the other thing comes down of the self-importance and things like that. So we find that we can be compassionate with people because we are not very overreactive. We are willing to forgive them because we see that they are caught up in a tremendous confusion. And then, as you know, Jesus Christ is reported to have said, "Forgive them, they know not what they are doing." And he said it in a very excruciating circumstances. So when we look at people who are irritating us in that light, then we become less reactive and more responsive. So that way we find that what lies outside the apparent invites us all the time, and we would like to move in and see what there is. And for that, a lot of masters have spoken, books have been written on that. The moment we become interested in it, strangely, life provides us with the food that we need in that direction. There is some strange connection, synchronicity maybe, but we find that the moment we are interested, life is ready to provide us with knowledge, understanding. Life is very inviting and becomes a close friend. Normally, there is a tendency to say that life is not treating me all right because something or the other is going wrong, and people will say, why should it happen to me? So that kind of self-importance and putting the blame on life, all those things move away when we begin to understand what lies beyond the apparent.
The apparent is anchored in the notions of pleasure and pain.
Oh.
Pain is good, pain is bad, pleasure is good. So we avoid pain and we seek pleasure.
Mm.
And all of life
Yes.
is broken down into those two elements of possibility. And this is not strictly a human thing. No animal seeks pain. We understand that. It's fine. But if we lock ourselves into just seeing pain as something bad and to be avoided, we are delaying our own personal growth. Plus, in addition, we can fall into fear and self-pity. The very things that we are saying are counter to our own development and growth, and also act as barriers to others. So I think that it's really important to understand where pain is coming from, so that we can actually bring healing, light and healing into that area.
Yes.
And if it's a physical issue, a physical pain, to go beyond the physical and understand the emotional impact that is having on us, and indeed the symbolic link between that physical experience and the emotional psyche. Because when we do that, we are no longer denying the pain, and we're actually working with it. And that's the best chance we have for healing it, and indeed transmuting it or transcending it into something else, which is, I think that, it's really important, because it's what you're talking about here. Because then we're not going to be blaming life. And it comes back to that quote that I was sharing at the beginning. Our level of awareness decides to what extent we are open to the cosmic energy and intelligence. So we acknowledge they're working through us and cooperate with them. And that, this isn't just about, setting intentions and manifesting what we want. It's about saying, okay, well, that's not going like I wanted it to, or I'm in trouble, or I'm in pain, or I'm ill. What can be done? What can I do to help myself through this experience? And who can I call on for help, and et cetera, et cetera. And that then changes the experience from horrendous to maybe still horrendous, but with hope and with alleviation, with relief.
Yeah, that is when we become less self-important, then there is a curiosity that makes us listen to life rather than react. So when the pain comes, there is a strange receptivity in the form of what is this, wanting to understand rather than avoid. So I was told, read somewhere that when Socrates was given the hemlock, he was going to be administered, but some friend asked him, aren't you afraid? And he is reported to have said, no, I am curious to know what happens when death comes. So that curiosity means there's no self-importance. There's no reaction in the form of I here, life there, kind of separation. So one chimes in with life. When that takes place, that we become a friend that no longer react to life, but be receptive to whatever it brings. There's great respect for life. Then there is no self-importance. And most suffering comes from self-importance because it interprets everything in terms of what do they get out of this. And quite often it doesn't get what it wants. So it is very disturbed with people, with life. So when there is this curiosity, meeting life, there is a certain learning experience, and there is humility in the sense of inviting everything and not resisting in terms of I, me, and the mind kind of situation. So I think this wanting to understand life and being curious about every incident it brings, that reduces the suffering also. The physical pain we have to go through, but the way we go through will be different. And then perhaps the whole picture changes. There is no resistance towards what life brings. And then that will also make us be less disturbed inside. The less disturbed we are, the more compassionate we will be. So that becomes a side byproduct. So that's what I feel, that this curiosity to meet life as to what it is, whether it's physical pain, pressure, or some other thing. The whole idea is to go through it with that wanting to experience that. So, in that sense, there is no resistance, there is only receptivity. And so it becomes a journey of, what shall we say, curiosity and learning rather than asking, what does this give me? The me and the mind become less important. So that way is a receptivity to life that makes a big change in our meeting people or meeting life in general. We may go through sorrowful situations, but we go through all of them with the respect for life, for whatever it brings. In that sense of receptivity, a whole picture changes. And by the way, we will be very sympathetic to people because we see they are also suffering and they are not looking in the direction of healing. They are allowing, reacting to it, making it worse, rather than allow themselves to be healed by going through it with that humility.
I like that you use the word humility, because humility really is the antidote to pride. And really, when we're talking about the ego, we're talking about it's almost like it's not the original meaning of the word, because the original meaning of the word is the self, and the self is strong and the ego is strong. There is less need, as we've said before, to defend it. And pride is less. Pride in the sense of being very touchy and self-protective,
Yes,
is really problematic because it closes us off from learning as well. And that humility that you mentioned is so important for us to keep open minds.
yeah.
I was thinking about an encounter I had with someone about 2 weeks ago, who was willing to, very willing to tell us about how he had lost his business.
Oh.
And, we were very sympathetic, and we were encouraging him to look into other avenues that he felt, because he felt that he was blocked. And I was saying, well, there are people doing, this, there are people doing that, might be worth you exploring. Not a bit of it. He was too interested in telling us that he knew everything that that could be known, and nobody else had anything to offer. And I thought, okay, I think this conversation needs to stop because we're not going to get anywhere. So we politely, said goodbye, wished him luck, and off we went. And yet I know, because I see people that have that are very close to his position turn things around and be able to overcome the challenges that he's coming. But that's the difference. I think he was so closed off because he was defending his pride, because he felt like he was failing and was berating himself for his failure. And so that stood in the way. And this is exactly what we are talking about. We need to have that humility to say, I don't know everything, and have the compassion to say, okay, so if I am failing at this moment in time, I need to find others who know more than me. And because when we do that, we are opening ourselves to that relief that we seek.
Yes, as you said, opening ourselves, that is what is usually missing, because people are busy wondering about how to support that I and its demands. So the closedness comes. So anyway, so also in your dealing with people using hypnosis, do you find some people are more receptive than others, and the help coming from hypnosis does not reach all people?
Some people are more receptive than others. If they are not receptive, they tend not to want to come to see me anyway in the first place. But those who are receptive to the idea have different levels of engagement, because some people are more afraid than others to open themselves. And so we do get quicker results with those who are more willing to open themselves. However, we are still able to help those who are willing but more afraid, because part of the process is them learning to relax and trust the process. And then as they learn to do that, then improvements follow.
Okay. Yeah, right. So depends on also how willing they are to step out of the rut into which human beings have fallen. We are all most of the times in the rut. And so you will be able to help them come out of the rut, because you touch them at a deeper level. And even the compassion that goes with your touching them, that already will do most of the work, because they understand that their suffering is more a result of their own outlook than somebody else responsible for it. That way, it's good to touch them in those areas where they will become self-reflective, and also maybe interested in understanding what lies beyond the apparent, because hypnosis itself is something outside the apparent. So,
Yes, and that is true. Hypnosis is one beautiful method that we have available to us, or tool that we have available to us to open our hearts and our understanding, so that we are able to grow and heal. And your wonderful book, I think, is something else that will help stimulate many to enrich their journey. So the title of the book that we are discussing is called The Journey into Oneself, and I'll be putting a link to it in the description box. Gopal, if people want to find out more about your work, how do they do that?
People want to?
If they want to find out more about your work and what you do, how do they do that?
I think I've given my, in that video, I've given my email ID. They can contact me through that. And I think that's the only link which is easy. Otherwise, phone call, I can give my phone number, but I think people prefer to write email than talk on the phone.
Email fine. I'll make sure the links are in the description box. Thank you.
Welcome. Right. And really enjoyed talking to you
Thank
because it had a healing effect on me. And so have a good time and wonderful work you're doing. So all the best.
Thank you very much, Gopal. And thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful week.
You too.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.